Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again, and this one's a doozy. We've talked about it before a handful of times, but now a patron has decided it's time to do a proper deep dive into one of the worst examples of heroes becoming villains ever. Emerald Twilight. So most of you know the broad strokes of this story already because I brought it up over the years because of its aftermath. During the ending part of the Death of Superman storyline, a cyborg claiming to be Superman teamed up with the villain Mongol and destroyed Hal Jordan's hometown of Coast City. Alec and Shanna, the Tandy computer whiz kids, remain unaccounted for. In his grief, Hal Jordan went insane, murdered the Green Lantern Corps, and absorbing the power of the Lanterns, he became the villain Parallax and tried to reboot the universe in Zero Hour. Eventually, he would die, be resurrected, and the supposed madness was revealed to be the fault of a yellow space bug made out of fear itself, which forever changed the direction of Green Lantern books from that moment onwards. Behind the scenes, we have editorial mandates at play. Gerard Jones had been the writer of the book for its third volume up until the storyline and sales were in a slump, so the Coast City thing and the fallout were meant as a shakeup. As was tradition in the 90s, it was apparently also the plan to have Hal lose the title of Green Lantern, allowing another character to take the role. Which does seem a little weird to me because there were already two other dudes who were Green Lantern on Earth, John Stewart and Guy Gardner, so it feels like a new character taking on the mantle wouldn't really make a difference since the title wasn't exactly exclusive as it was. Still, the overall plan was going to be a more heroic end for Hal as Green Lantern, going into space and dealing with imposter guardians of the universe while defending the real ones, absorbing the power of the central power battery, and no longer needing the ring to be a superhero. He'd give up the mantle and take on a new one, leaving a new character to become Earth's main Green Lantern. A lot of the story was apparently completed already, but then rejected, and writer Ron Marz was brought on to make a new storyline for issues 48 to 50. According to Marz, the original storyline was just not that big of a shakeup, certainly not enough to drum up interest in the title. And while I don't agree with the decision to make Hal a villain, I get it. It's more dramatic and will get more heads turning to have the main character become an out-and-out villain than it will to just have them change their name. But it's just such a massive character portrayal to have him become a murderer of people he's known for years. Even the garbage killings with Wally West for Heroes in Crisis were an accident, not him deliberately murdering people. Oh, and in case you hadn't heard, the last vestiges of Heroes in Crisis have now been completely undone. Here's some writing advice. Don't make a story so hated that people are still undoing it 5 years later. This is not helped by the fact that in the issues leading up to Emerald Twilight, Hal was doing okay. Sure, he wasn't happy about Coast City, but he wasn't having a breakdown. You could argue that he was just in a state of shock, the totality of it didn't hit him until later, but the truth is it's two different writers at odds with each other about the direction of the book. Ron Marz wrote the 3 issues as a rush job. He said that he would have preferred to have 6 issues to really flesh out everything and make the descent into madness more believable, but they were committed to everything changing at issue 50, so there we were. Hal Jordan's turn to evil was number 2 on my very old top 15 list of worst heroes becoming villains, and it only didn't make number 1 because I loved Cassandra Cain more, and it felt like an even bigger middle finger from DC, since at least with Hal they were trying to drum up interest in the book, whereas with her they just didn't give a damn. And oh me, oh my, was there fallout from this. As you can imagine, hate letters, death threats, all the worst, most unacceptable tendencies of fandom coming out over a bad creative choice. And of course, it soured a lot of people to Kyle Rayner, who became the one and only Green Lantern afterwards. And it took a full decade to actually undo this book. But it's been almost 30 years since it originally came out, so let's dig into Green Lantern, Emerald Twilight, and see if it's actually a better read in hindsight than it was at the time.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn.
I'm reading from a trade, but hey, it's only 3 issues, and I do like the covers, so might as well talk about them. We start with issue number 48. One thing I will complain about this era, that logo kinda sucks. It's not terrible if Green Lantern was a fire-based character. In other issues, the flame is green, but the flames just seem like a weird choice for the visual flair instead of, you know, that Green Lantern symbol, or even having the text be green. Anyway, Hal is kneeling in the rubble of Coast City and projecting out a construct of it while screaming. It's a good cover, though combined with his other arm being in a sling, it kinda makes it seem like he's yelling because he just broke his other hand doing this. We open with that shot of him in the rubble, just in a close-up. This is Hal Jordan. I hope you're taking notes because this will be on the test. He's a Green Lantern. Maybe the best Green Lantern. But this sandcastle he's building is not going well. This is a hole in the ground. Do we need to go back and review what we've learned so far? It's 12 miles in diameter. Roughly. It's a very big hole.
Wow. What a hole.
But not even close to the size of the hole in Hal Jordan's life. Not by far. Although definitely as big as the hole in his bank account now, because this is where he kept all his stuff. You see, this hole used to be Coast City, home to a great deal Hal Jordan held dear. This was the place Hal Jordan grew up, where he worshipped at the shrine he called Father, where he first knew love. Admittedly, it's kind of weird that his first love was a statue of his dad, but we're trying to be sympathetic here. But that's all gone now, expunged by a madman's dreams of conquest. And all that's left is, well, a hole. There was a hole here. It's gone now. Oh wait, there it is. Hal finally stands up and the narration talks about how the lantern ring has a few restrictions, mostly dependent on the will of whoever uses it. As such, Hal shoots it into the air and a dome forms around where Coast City was. A vision of his father emerges from the green energy, Hal actually pointing out that his arm is healed by now and he wants to talk. He talks about how much he loved and admired his father, wanted him to say how proud he was. Good Lord, Hal, that was a long time. Just once! But you hardly knew I was alive. My God, how crappy was our relationship if even this fake construct of you that I made is still being a dick to me? But of course, this is really just a manifestation of Hal's damaged psyche, as it points out that all of his accomplishments mean nothing when it comes to Coast City being destroyed. After the vision of his father walks off and then crashes his plane again, a vision of his mother appears. She encourages him to leave behind his past recriminations and guilt, that it'll poison him otherwise. Move on, Hal, and take the memories, the good ones, with you. Be satisfied with the memories. The memories of us both being dead and your father not giving you the time of day and the memory of your hometown being destroyed. Okay, I'd like a do-over of my speech. Hal says that memories aren't enough and he pushes his will to make an idyllic recreation of Coast City. All it would take, really, is the will. Oh, certainly every last vestige of willpower that could be summoned. But it would be tempting. Think of it. Narrator, you might want to get caught up. It looks like he's already doing it. The power to resurrect that which no longer exists, or create that which only exists in the mind's eye. Bring back Arby's potato cakes, damn it! Bring them back! The power to make the dead live again, to redress any wrong, to rewrite history with a happy ending. And we see a girl kissing a boy on the cheek in this panel. Yeah, that originally went down with her kneeing him in the crotch. Happier ending, really. The power to be God. Sounds good, but then you get the electric bill and... Hal meets a girl named Jennifer, his first love when he was young, who apparently helped him recover from his dad's death, but then broke up with her like an idiot because he was young and wanted to date around. He acknowledges how stupid that was and sadly learns that she was in Coast City when everything happened. Although it really is unclear, especially given the fake parents and all, if this is Hal knowing that that's what happened to her, or if in his damaged mental state he just assumes that's the case. They say their farewells as Hal re-enters his childhood home and meets his dad again. It looks like his father is finally going to tell him he's proud of him, but then the construct dissipates. His ring has run out of power. Honestly, kind of shocked it lasted as long as it did. I don't think he's charged it over the last couple of days, and recreating an entire city plus several people to talk to him. Feels like it should have fizzled out after a minute or so with a big low battery beeping like a smoke alarm. No, the warning in this case comes from the Guardians of the Universe, as a projection of one suddenly appears in front of him. Your power ring's time limit has expired. So give me more. I need to bring everything back! Out of the question, 2814. But perhaps if you paid these microtransactions, you could get that power now. He says he's being recalled to Oa for disciplinary action. He's violated the most sacred rule of the Green Lantern Corps, using the ring for personal gain. Personal gain? This is about personal loss! Which you're trying to gain back, Hal. What? The projection tells him to surrender his ring and prepare for transport to Oa, but instead he realizes that he can use the ring to absorb the power from the projection itself, giving him a bit of a recharge. Oh, I'll come back to Oa all right, but you're not gonna like me when I get there. I don't know. Opinion polls on Oa say 75% are in favor of giving the middle finger to ancient authority figures who keep being assholes. Hal flies off, presumably to Oa, though I've got to imagine he needs to stop and get his power battery first for an actual recharge. Sure, the projection probably had quite a bit of juice in it, but it can't be stronger than an actual full charge of the ring. Issue 48 ends with Kyle Rayner and his girlfriend Alex watching him fly off from a distance, presumably at some beach, otherwise they're in the middle of the desert. Kyle makes a wish as if it was a falling star, which, as he points out, is going in the opposite direction for that. Though I'm more confused about Alex breaking the fourth wall by staring at us instead of the green streak in the sky. We move into issue 49 and god damn, that is a great cover. Like, for such an infamous storyline, Hal wearing all the lantern rings and grinning maniacally is just so memorable and iconic. I have devoured all these ring pops! We open with Hal flying through, well, what I presume to be space, but space has a lot of red squiggles in it for some reason. Space has varicose veins. Too bad it had to happen this way. But we're kind of committed now, and skipping a couple of months on an unpopular book to try to figure out a new plan would just be silly. The rest of the narration gets you up to speed. Hal Jordan was the greatest of the Green Lanterns, but now he's suffered such a massive personal tragedy, and in his grief he has become very dangerous. So he set off for Oa, intent on obtaining vast power from the Guardians, so that he might recreate all he had lost. Truly a mad errand, especially since he forgot to pack a snack. Oa's overlords have long been loath to directly involve themselves in matters of even the direst consequences. Thus they created their pawns, their Green Lanterns, to act in their stead. The Green Lanterns should really unionize against their manager's lazy behavior. And indeed, Green Lanterns have been dispatched to try to stop Hal. Kihan and Lara, both accomplished warriors of the Corps. I could have told them they weren't up to it. Yeah, but you're the narrator. Everything to you is in hindsight. This is pretty much how most of the issue goes. Past or relatively new Green Lantern Corps members show up to confront Hal and try to stop him, try to get him to abandon his mad quest. However, the result is always the same. He knocks them out and then steals their rings, which effectively kills them since they're in the vacuum of space. Admittedly, there's clearly a bit of a charge left on them to preserve themselves in space, since as we see with Tomar 2, he's able to speak even after his ring is taken. On Oa, the Guardians discuss the situation and how they really should have seen this coming given how resourceful Hal Jordan is proven to be. Ganthet, brothers, please. This squabbling is unseemly for such a trivial matter. One of our members has gone rogue, swearing to steal our power, and has murdered 2 accomplished warriors sent to stop him. What's the big D? Hal Jordan must confront even those to whom he's closest, or at least the ones introduced in the last 2 years. Were he not nearly blinded by his obsession, would these acts wreak havoc with his conscience? I rather like to think so. I wonder if we're going to spend the next 10+ years studying his guilt. With his latest battle against Green Lantern Boudica, she declares that the ring is as much a part of her as her hand. And as such, Hal cuts off her hand. That's the thing about this storyline. The first part is, in my humble opinion, actually pretty good. It's all about his mental state and him trying to come to terms with a horrible tragedy and staying strictly in denial about the whole thing. But here, we've jumped from anger and full of grief to, I will cut off my friend's hand to get one more power ring for my collection and leave everyone else for dead. The escalation is just way too fast to believe he's in a state of mind where he can decide to do this. And it's a very violent, unpleasant turn for the book. Meanwhile, the Guardians have caught on to how serious this is, although in that case, maybe they should send, 50 instead of 1 or 2 at a time. They have a last-ditch plan to stop Hal. One person they're convinced will do the trick, but in the meantime, Hal has to face off against the being who trained him. Kilowog. You can't beat me, Kilowog. You can see how I'm armed. Okay, but to be fair, you just proved with Boudica how easy it is to disarm someone.
Didn't I teach you nothing? It's the warrior, not his weapons.
See, you say that, but then someone brings a gun to a knife fight. It can happen to anyone, really, even to the best of us. It weighs upon you, the responsibility of wielding one of the most awesome weapons in the universe. Literally billions of lives dependent on you. And what do you get in return? Well, not much, frankly. Merchandising rights, at least. You have all this power, and at some point you wonder, what good is it to me? What has it done for me? And you don't like the answer. And you do something about it. The thing is, though, is that while that is a realistic outlook on this sort of situation, it doesn't necessarily reflect the character of the person it describes. Just as with Heroes in Crisis and the idea of someone being out of character when they break, the issue is that Hal Jordan wouldn't break. And he didn't in the previous issues. For most people, yes, this perfectly reflects who they are and the writing is trying to get that across, but Hal Jordan is not most people. He's an extraordinary individual found to be worthy of the greatest weapon in the universe. He'll get angry, he'll get sad, but he'll overcome his fear, overcome his anger. But the story needs to go in a particular way, thus while the writing here is certainly better than Heroes in Crisis, it still suffers from the same misunderstanding of the characters that did. Hal knocks down Kilowog and takes his ring, the others disappearing for a second in the artwork, and he flies off to finally confront the Guardians. They order him to surrender, but of course he's gone too far for that now. As such, they unveil their last plan to stop Hal. Once his friend and mentor, but later his mortal enemy, Sinestro, who has been our narrator this whole time. And they gave him those spiffy robes to wear. You can't fault the Guardians of the Universe and their fashion sense. This leads us to our final issue, Green Lantern number 50. It's the weakest of the three covers, but still pretty good, depicting Hal in the Parallax armor flying away from an exploding central power battery, a great big Green Lantern symbol behind him. Personally, I'd have made the symbol either there or up top with the Emerald Twilight masthead be cracked or shattered, but that's just me. We open, of course, exactly where we left off, Hal confronting Sinestro in front of the power battery. I should note that each issue has been titled as The Past, The Present, and The Future, which all work for their respective issues, though personally I would have leaned into the Twilight name and have them be like Dusk, Dawn, Twilight, or something along those lines. Almost amusing, isn't it? You returning as the prodigal son, and me held up as Oa's last hope. The irony is delicious. Also kind of baffling logic, since, well, you have repeatedly defeated me. Hal threatens to kill him if he doesn't move aside. Sinestro balks at this, proclaiming that nothing ever changes, and he's still one of the good guys. Hal proceeds to blast him. My, aren't you a grim little fellow?
Dude! And it's the grim and gritty that makes the story so awesome!
Sinestro taunts him by proclaiming that he needs a crutch to defeat him by using all those rings. A pretty obvious ploy, but Hal accepts that he doesn't want any doubt in Sinestro's mind that he defeated the guy. Don't worry, Hal. It'll be a snap to remember that. You'd think the Guardians would use the opportunity to gather up the discarded rings, but nope. Up until now, Sinestro was trapped inside the central power battery, a prisoner of it, and he rants at Hal as they fight over what a terrible fate that was. Hal doesn't care, seeing that Sinestro was a villain who deserved worse, but in turn Sinestro points out that he's fallen so far that they see him as the lesser of two evils. The two fight over the course of several pages, the Guardians watching and becoming increasingly worried as the tables turn, and Hal is able to beat Sinestro within an inch of his life, and then snaps his neck. With Sinestro dead, Hal proceeds to the power battery, but Kilowog has recovered enough to try to stop him one last time.
Can't let you kill anybody else!
Kilowog, I didn't kill the Corps, just took their rings, because I needed their power, and now with them Oh crap, I didn't pick up the rings again, and more lanterns could probably take me down now! Kilowog points out that as soon as he absorbs the energy of the power battery, all those lanterns left in space are gonna die. Hal ponders this for a moment, but is too focused on trying to set everything right. Kilowog proclaims that even though he killed Sinestro, he's not like him. He can still stop what he's doing. And Hal proceeds to blast Kilowog into a green skeleton. Which is funny because I'm pretty sure the ring has safeguards to prevent that, like just in its programming, and can't really be overcome with willpower. Ah well, doesn't matter. He was back to life a few years later. Comic books! Hal proclaims that he's crossed the line and can't go back, and discards his ring, saying he doesn't deserve it anymore. The Guardians come out, saying that Hal will be punished, and then they just don't. You haven't taken a personal interest in anything for so long, you've forgotten how. I mean, they knew enough to call you or try to summon lanterns to stop you. Hal says he just wanted his life back and they could have given him the power to do it. To tamper with what has been is the most grievous crime of all. Don't you think I know that? Yeah, restoring things to life seems like less of a crime than the actual killing. Hal says that he's beyond caring about that, and there's no turning back for him now. Despite the fact that he's not even wearing the ring anymore, I guess he left himself some power like he did for the lanterns in space. He flies right up to the battery and begins absorbing it. And the Guardians do absolutely nothing to stop him! Like, shoot him with energy beams? Summon more lanterns? An emergency shut-off for the battery?
We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
Like, nobody mentions this when they talk about this story, as if he was still wearing all those Green Lantern rings to have all that power to do something like this, but no! Apparently any idiot could have done this before, as long as they weren't loudly announcing their plans like Hal was. Even the Guardians seem shocked that they're not doing anything. Thusly it ends? We simply allow him to expunge our grand design? Brothers, are we too atrophied to save ourselves, or preserve the doctrine by which we have guided the universe? Yes, it is done. Look, I only got like 3 hours of sleep last night, and I am just not ready to deal with this. I'm knocking off for the rest of the day. Ganthet, the Guardian with a ponytail, says that this is unacceptable, and as such, the other Guardians declare, "You're absolutely right, Ganthet. As such, you fix it." While the central power battery begins to shatter, the other Guardians transfer all their energy into Ganthet and die. Hal emerges from the destroyed battery in his parallax armor, though without the cape, which I definitely think it needs to complete the supervillain aesthetic. He spots all the dead Guardians, but what really gets his attention is his old lantern ring, which he walks over to and smashes with his foot before flying off. Ganthet emerges from the pile of dead Guardians. "I grieve for you, brothers, though we disagreed bitterly more often than not. I fear, however, there is little time for eulogies. So I'll make this quick. I always hated you all, and now that I'm in charge, there are going to be some changes around here. For starters, Friday is now Silly Hat Day." He picks up the remains of Hal's ring. "Our greatest champion. Yet we did not stand by him in his need. Our unwavering adherence to our edicts prevented the slightest compassion. If we all ever come back to life in the future, we'd better make sure we never make that mistake again, boy howdy." Ganthet wonders if they were the architects of their own destruction. And yeah, their inaction definitely didn't help, but really it's not like they could grant what he wanted. The recreation of Coast City that he made was just that, a recreation, a replica. It wasn't real. Sure, they probably should have done better about dealing with his emotions, but it's not like they could truly bring it back into existence. In any case, Ganthet has enough power to reforge Hal's ring and then fly off, needing to make sure that the sacrifice of the Guardians wasn't for nothing. And thus he arrives on Earth, where Kyle Rayner sees the green streak of light again. Leave the dance floor to get some air and you never know what's gonna happen. Lesson learned, Kyle, never go dancing. It crashes right in front of him. It, of course, being Ganthet. "You shall have to do." Why? I feel like he could have contacted Jon Stewart or Guy Gardner to let them know what's up and to give one of them the ring. Ganthet tells him to take the ring. What am I supposed to do with it? What you must. Is this a marriage proposal? Ganthet then teleports away, keeping up the long streak of the Guardians being useless idiots. And so our comic ends with Kyle putting on the ring and transforming into a version of Hal's Green Lantern outfit. Oh man, I think my life just got a lot more complicated. On the plus side, my abs look great in this! Emerald Twilight is a mixed bag, but mostly on the bad side. Like I said earlier, I actually think the first part of it is pretty good. An exploration of Hal's psyche, his regrets, and the mindset he's in as he tries to make sense of a horrible disaster that's killed millions of people and destroyed his home. The second part is just repetitive, and while he'll later claim that he was trying to keep them alive, the fact that he cuts off someone's hand and keeps leaving them heavily injured in the vacuum of space really gets in the way of the idea that he's not deliberately killing them. And finally, his fight with Sinestro is good, but the dialogue really feels like it leans into grim and gritty anti-hero talk too much, even lampshaded by Sinestro. Still, the fact that he so easily got to Oa and defeated everything in his path shows how rushed this is. Yes, he's getting more powerful with each ring he steals, but it seems like there should be more defenses he has to bypass, and the idea that the Guardians just stand there and let Hal go into the central power battery after he takes off his ring is laughably stupid. The sting of these plot points has softened considerably thanks to knowing where things go in the story and Hal's eventual resurrection and absolving of all the murders. For all his faults, Jeff Johns did a remarkable job with Green Lantern Rebirth and explaining away a lot of the nonsense and putting Hal back properly on the heroic path. So how could the story be saved but accomplish the same thing? I think you could keep most of this and still make it work. Hal goes to Oa, absorbs the central power battery, or at least severely damages it, and realizes what he's done, that he truly has become the villain and he can't resurrect Coast City even with all that power. He doesn't actually kill anyone, but he got so close to doing so that he chooses to retire. A villain to the core, but not an irredeemable one. The Guardians decide that the failure of the Lantern Corps to stop him requires a radical alteration of their methods, and thus they decide to go back to Earth and start with a single Lantern, Kyle, to slowly build a new core. But that's just with hindsight. Obviously, with how rushed everything had to be, it's pretty impressive that it came out as good as it was in the writing and art. The plot points suck, but we've had sucky plot points with horrid dialogue before, and I think the dialogue here mostly works. Next time, one last Patreon-sponsored review for a while. Charge your flux capacitors and refill your Mr. Fusion. We're going back to the future!
Sitting on my couch reviewing comics, the worst books that you will ever see. It's sad that comic books are for geeks, but they're not. They're for everybody. Linkara. If you doubt that I am a man, I am a man.
Oh man, I think my life just got a lot more complicated. Screw this! Homeless guy, you want this ring?
Well, my work is done here,
What do you mean your work is done? You didn't do anything.
didn't I?
Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!